There was a moment in history when sugar stopped arriving in solid form. It didn't announce itself. There was no public ceremony. No warning label appeared on the first bottle. It simply became liquid, invisible, and everywhere. Before that moment, sugar was something you added. After it, sugar became something already inside. The change took less than 2 decades to complete. By the time anyone thought to ask what had happened, an entire generation had already grown up inside the new normal. This is not a story about what sugar does to the body. This is about how a single industrial decision reshaped what eating meant, without anyone deciding to reshape it. If this perspective feels different, you're not alone. In 1950, sugar existed in recognizable forms. It came in bags, heavy cloth bags, sometimes paper, delivered from the store or kept in the pantry. It sat in bowls on kitchen tables, white ceramic bowls, often with a small spoon resting inside. It was added to coffee in the morning, sprinkled on cereal by children who controlled the pour, folded into cake batter on Saturday afternoons when there was time and a reason to bake. You could see it. You could measure it. You controlled exactly how much went in. Sugar had texture. It had weight. It left residue on your fingers if you touched it. It required a conscious action, the opening of a container, the lifting of a spoon, the deliberate addition to something that existed without it. Children knew what sugar was, not as a concept, but as a substance. It arrived in birthday cakes that someone had made, in holiday cookies baked in a hot kitchen with flour on the countertops, in glasses of lemonade made by hand, with actual lemons, on summer afternoons when guests were coming. It was special because it was occasional. When sugar appeared, it meant something. A celebration, a weekend, a moment set apart from the ordinary week. It marked time. Adults didn't think about sugar very often. It occupied a small corner of weekly life. A teaspoon in morning coffee, the same amount every day. A slice of pie on Sunday after church. A cookie from the jar on the counter, one that had been baked earlier in the week and was now running out. Sugar had a place, and that place was limited, not by rule, but by circumstance. The circumstance was this: sugar cost money, required effort, and existed in finite amounts. The bag on the shelf would eventually empty. The bowl would need refilling. The act of obtaining sugar, of preparing something with it, carried friction. That friction created natural limits. When people ate meals, they ate meals. This sounds obvious now, but the clarity of it has been lost. Dinner was meat, potatoes, vegetables. Breakfast was eggs, toast, maybe oatmeal with a small pour of milk. Lunch was a sandwich, bread, filling, perhaps a slice of cheese, maybe a piece of fruit if it was in season. Drinks were water, milk, coffee, tea. That was the list. There were no other options in most homes. Nobody called this a diet. It wasn't a plan. It wasn't a philosophy. It wasn't something people debated or read about in magazines. It was simply what food was. The rhythm of eating followed a structure that no one had designed, but everyone understood. 3 meals, long gaps in between, hours where nothing was consumed except perhaps water or coffee. Hunger arrived on a schedule, predictable, expected, normal, and eating answered it. Between meals, people didn't eat. Not because of discipline, not because of willpower, not because someone had told them not to, but because there was nothing casual to eat. Food required preparation. Even simple food required steps. If you wanted something sweet, you made it, or you bought it fresh from somewhere that had made it that day. Cookies came from a bakery, still warm, or from your own oven after an hour of work. Cake required ingredients, time, a reason to make it. Sweetness had friction. If a child wanted candy, someone had to walk to a store, exchange money, carry it home. The candy was kept somewhere. It was distributed in small amounts. It ran out. There was no infinite supply in a drawer that replenished itself every week. The same was true for soda. If you wanted soda, you went somewhere. A drugstore with a fountain counter, a diner, a vending machine at the bus station. You bought a small glass bottle, 6.5 ounces, sometimes 8. You drank it there, standing or sitting, or on the way home. When it was empty, you returned the bottle. You didn't keep it, you didn't stockpile them. Soda wasn't something you kept in the house. Not because it was forbidden, not because it was considered unhealthy, but because it belonged to a category of things you consumed outside the home, in specific contexts, for specific reasons. Even children understood this. Soda was a treat. It belonged to special occasions, a trip downtown, a Saturday outing, a stop after school on the last day before summer. Not Tuesday afternoon, not breakfast, not 3 times a day, not every day. The kitchen didn't have rows of bottled drinks. The refrigerator held milk delivered in glass bottles and picked up from the porch in the morning, and maybe juice that had been squeezed that morning from actual fruit. That was all. If you were thirsty, you drank water from the tap. People didn't snack the way the word would later come to mean. There were no drawers full of packages, no pantries stocked with individually wrapped items designed to be eaten alone, quickly, on the move. If you were hungry between meals, you had 2 choices. You waited, or you ate leftovers from the previous meal. This wasn't virtue. It wasn't restraint. It wasn't some moral superiority. It was structure. Food had preparation time. Sweetness had context. The day had a rhythm, and that rhythm organized life in ways that were invisible until the rhythm disappeared. Breakfast happened in the morning at roughly the same time. The family ate together or in sequence as people woke. Lunch happened in midday. Dinner happened in the evening. The gaps between were long enough that hunger built, emptied, and built again. The body followed this pattern. It expected food at certain times. It didn't expect food at all times. And then industry looked at that rhythm and saw inefficiency. The decision began in the early 1960s, but its roots reached back further. After the Second World War, American agriculture had produced a surplus, corn especially. Fields that had fed a war effort now fed a peace with no clear market. Farmers grew more than the country could eat as corn. The solution was chemistry. In the late 1950s, researchers discovered that cornstarch could be broken down into glucose, and glucose could be converted into fructose. The result was a liquid sweetener that tasted like sugar, poured like water, and cost less than half the price of cane sugar. High fructose corn syrup. It wasn't marketed as a revolution. It was presented as an improvement. Cheaper, easier to transport, easier to blend, shelf-stable. Manufacturers could pump it directly into production lines. The first major adopter was the soft drink industry. In 1980, Coca-Cola announced it would begin using high fructose corn syrup in some of its products. Pepsi followed. Within 5 years, nearly every major beverage company had switched. The reasoning was economic, not ideological. Sugar prices were high, corn syrup was abundant, the taste difference was negligible to most consumers. profit margins improved. Nobody intended to change how people ate. They intended to reduce costs. But cost reduction had a side effect. When sugar was expensive, drinks were smaller. When corn syrup became cheap, drinks grew. A 10-ounce bottle became 12, then 16, then 20, then 32, then a liter. Refills became free. Cups became collectibles. Because the ingredient was cheap, more of it made sense. Soda companies didn't change their product to harm anyone. They changed it because the market allowed it and growth required it. At the same time, food manufacturers faced a problem. Processed foods, frozen dinners, canned soups, boxed meals didn't taste very good. They were bland, convenient, but forgettable. Sugar made them taste better. Not table sugar, that was still expensive, but corn syrup was cheap, liquid, easy to dose. A little sweetness in tomato sauce made it richer. In bread, it softened bitterness. In salad dressing, it balanced acidity. So sugar, liquid, invisible sugar, began appearing in places it had never been before. Crackers, soup, pasta sauce, peanut butter, ketchup, bread, salad dressing, yogurt. Cereal that was already sweet became sweeter. It wasn't added to deceive, it was added because it worked. Sweetness made food more palatable. More palatable food sold better. Better sales justified production costs. The logic was clean. And once the logic was in place, it spread. By 1985, high fructose corn syrup was in thousands of products. Most shoppers had never heard the term. They noticed that food tasted better, that it lasted longer, that it was cheaper than it used to be. This felt like progress. And for a while, no one asked what had been traded. The normalization didn't happen in a single year. It happened in layers. First, soda stopped being occasional. In the 1970s, soda was still something you drank at parties, at restaurants, on road trips. By the 1990s, it was in the house, in the fridge, in 12-packs, in 2-liter bottles. Parents bought it because children asked for it. Children asked for it because it was everywhere. School vending machines, fast food restaurants, gas stations, convenience stores. It stopped being a treat because it stopped being rare. At the same time, cup sizes grew. A small soda in 1955 was 7 ounces. A small soda in 1990 was 12. A medium was 20, a large was 32. Extra large was 44. No one announced the change. The sizes just expanded. And because refills were free, the amount consumed stopped being tied to the amount ordered. People drank more because more was available. The same pattern appeared in food. Portion sizes grew, not because people demanded more, but because food was cheaper to produce. A larger burger cost the restaurant almost the same as a smaller one. Selling the larger size for $1 more increased profit. Supersizing became standard. Again, this wasn't deception. It was marketed as value. More food for less money. Why wouldn't you want that? And people did want it, because value made sense. But value changed behavior. When portions are larger, people eat more, not because they're hungrier, because the food is there. Finishing what's on the plate became automatic. Meanwhile, the language around food shifted. In the 1970s, food was fuel. In the 1980s, food became experience. In the 1990s, food became reward. Marketing language emphasized comfort, indulgence, treating yourself. You deserve this. You've earned it. Life is hard. Enjoy something sweet. Sweetness became emotional. not physical. Children who grew up in the 1980s didn't remember a time when soda wasn't normal. They didn't remember when juice was something you squeezed, not something you poured from a carton with 10% actual juice and 30 grams of sugar. They didn't remember when fruit snacks meant fruit. By the time they became parents, they bought the same things for their own children. Not because they wanted to feed them sugar, because this was what food had become. The grocery store reshaped around convenience. Entire aisles dedicated to beverages, entire sections for snacks. Shelves of brightly colored packages designed to be eaten quickly, alone, on the go. Eating between meals stopped being unusual, it became standard. Granola bars, fruit cups and syrup, juice boxes, yogurt tubes, snack packs, all sweet, all portable, all normal. At school, vending machines appeared. At work, break rooms stocked soda. At home, pantries filled with options. The friction disappeared. If you wanted something sweet, you didn't bake it, you opened it. This wasn't laziness, it was the design of the environment. And the environment taught a new lesson. Hunger doesn't need to wait. By the year 2000, the average American consumed 150 pounds of sugar per year. In 1900, it had been 5 pounds. The increase didn't happen because people started adding more sugar to their coffee. It happened because sugar was already inside nearly everything they ate. A single can of soda contained 39 grams of sugar. A flavored yogurt contained 20. A serving of pasta sauce contained 12. A granola bar contained 10. 2 tablespoons of ketchup contained 8. If you ate a typical day, cereal for breakfast, a sandwich with condiments for lunch, a frozen dinner with sauce, a soda with dinner, a snack in the evening, you consumed over 100 grams of sugar without ever touching a dessert. Most of it was invisible. People didn't realize they were eating it because they couldn't see it. It didn't taste overwhelmingly sweet. It tasted normal. And normal had shifted. Children growing up in this environment developed preferences based on what they encountered. If everything they ate contained sugar, foods without it tasted bland, vegetables tasted bitter, plain water tasted like nothing. Their palates calibrated to sweetness. Studies from the early 2000s found that children could identify dozens of brand logos before they could identify common vegetables. They knew what a Happy Meal was before they knew what lettuce was. This wasn't ignorance, it was environment. At the same time, eating patterns changed. In the 1960s, people ate 3 meals a day. By the 2000s, people ate constantly. Breakfast, mid-morning snack, lunch, afternoon snack, dinner, evening snack, sometimes a late-night snack. The body never had long stretches without food. Hunger never built. Appetite became a low hum that was answered immediately. This reshaped metabolism. When the body receives sugar constantly, insulin is released constantly. When insulin is high, fat storage is activated. When fat storage is constant, weight increases. The mechanism was straightforward. Between 1980 and 2000, obesity rates in the United States doubled. Childhood obesity tripled. This wasn't because people suddenly lost willpower. It was because the food environment had fundamentally changed. Doctors began seeing conditions in children that had previously appeared only in adults: type 2 diabetes, fatty liver disease, high blood pressure. These weren't moral failures, they were physiological responses to a new kind of food. But the conversation didn't frame it that way. The conversation focused on personal responsibility, portion control, exercise, willpower. The environment remained unexamined. Meanwhile, the cycle deepened. People who grew up eating this way fed their children the same way, not because they didn't care, because this was what normal looked like. Lunchboxes filled with juice boxes, fruit snacks, cookies. Breakfast was cereal in bright boxes with cartoon characters. Dinner was quick, convenient, pre-packaged. Nobody had time to cook from scratch. Both parents worked. Schedules were packed. Convenience wasn't optional, it was necessary. And convenient food was sweet food. By 2010, nearly 80% of packaged foods in American grocery stores contained added sugar. It wasn't in desserts, it was in everything. Most of these changes didn't feel like decisions, they felt like progress. If this way of seeing history resonates, this channel may feel familiar to you. The decision to replace sugar with corn syrup wasn't made by one person. It was made by engineers trying to solve a cost problem, by farmers trying to sell surplus crops, by manufacturers trying to improve taste, by marketers trying to increase sales. Each decision was rational, but rational decisions compound. What began as a cost-saving measure in beverage production became the architecture of the modern food system. And the modern food system reshaped eating. Not quickly, not violently, quietly, over decades. People didn't choose to eat more sugar. Sugar chose to be in more places. And once it was everywhere, it stopped being visible. Today, someone trying to avoid added sugar must read every label, must skip entire aisles, must prepare most food from scratch, must opt out of convenience. This takes time, knowledge, money. For most people, opting out isn't practical, so they eat what's available. And what's available was designed over 50 years by thousands of decisions, none of which intended to harm anyone. But intention and outcome are not the same thing. The question isn't whether those decisions were malicious. The question is whether we noticed them becoming normal, and whether we still notice now. This wasn't the last decision of its kind.